All right, let me ask you something. When was the last time you launched a fresh batch of ad creative for your Meta or TikTok campaigns? Now, if you have to think about it, that is the problem. And here's what I see over and over again with Shopify brands. A founder or a media buyer, they find one or two kind of winning ads and they kind of ride those ads out until the performance kind of falls off the cliff. And then it's a scramble, a mad scramble, I might add. Suddenly you're trying to find like new creative, you have to find new creators, you have to negotiate usage rights, got to wait a few weeks for delivery. And the whole time while you're waiting for this new creative, your CPAs are climbing. And so the issue really isn't targeting. It's not your offer. It's really that you just ran out of creative and, you don't really have a system to replace it. And I think that's where Incense comes in. And full disclosure, I actually wrote a very comprehensive review of their platform over at ecommercefastlane.com because I think what they've built really matters for Shopify brands at the kind of growth stage and beyond. Now, Incense is a UGC and a creator marketing platform. It really does give you access to over 20,000 vetted creators across more than 35 countries. So you can launch kind of structured briefs using their templates, and you can chat directly with creators inside the platform. And every piece of content that you approve, it also comes with a lifetime usage rights. Now, that last part's really huge, actually, now I think about it. There's no more chasing permissions 6 months later when you want to reuse a top performer. And I believe really what sets apart this platform from other UGC platforms is just how much it covers under one roof. You don't just get raw video clips. You can run UGC campaigns. You can do product seeding. You can do Meta partnership ads and TikTok Spark ads. You can even do, this is new, but you can even do TikTok shop and affiliate programs all from within one workflow. And if you're at a stage where you don't really have the bandwidth to manage these creator relationships yourself, they even have a kind of a white glove, fully managed service where their team handles all of it end to end. So if you're a Shopify store and you're doing, $50K or more per month and you're spending a lot of money on paid social, the question really isn't whether, you need a steady pipeline of UGC, because we know you do. The question is whether, are you going to continue cobbling together to make all of this work manually, or are you actually going to build a system? And I think that's the benefits of Incense. So you can check out Incense. They're spelled INSENSE.pro, incense.pro, or you can hit the link in the show notes and that'll redirect you over. I would honestly go and book a free demo. Just take a look and see what their platform is. I know it'll help your brand. So let's now jump into today's episode. All right, well, welcome back to e-commerce Fastlane. 1 week ago, something really happened to your Shopify store that maybe a lot of you didn't notice, that your products are now completely shoppable inside ChatGPT, like inside the Google's kind of AI mode, like inside Microsoft Copilot, like literally you can inside now into the Gemini app. Shopify kind of flipped the switch. I believe it's around March 24th, and more than 5 million stores went live right away inside these AI conversations. And there was no setup, there was no app to install, no email marketing asking for permission. Everything just happened automatically. And here's what I find really wild was that most merchants that I've talked to in the last week or so, they had no idea that this actually happened. And that's what I'm going to break down today. Talk about what happened and what it means for your business. Because if you're doing your first 10K a month, or you're doing $5 million a year, it doesn't really matter. There are 3 things that you should do before the end of this week to learn more about this new activation inside ChatGPT.
You're listening to E-commerce Fastlane, the podcast show to help you build, manage, grow, and scale a successful and thriving company, powered by Shopify. Listen to real conversations with partners and subject matter experts as they share proven practical strategies, platforms, and the best Shopify apps to help you accelerate your business. The time is now for you to improve efficiencies, grow revenue, profit, and lifetime customer loyalty. Please welcome your host, startup founder and strategic advisor, Steve Hutt.
So let me walk you through what Shopify did here, because I think the details matter here. So Shopify has been building something that I've written a lot about this agentic storefronts. And basically, it's a system that connects your product catalog to these AI chat platforms kind of through one panel in your Shopify admin. Like there's one toggle. Products sync automatically through something that they call the Shopify catalog, which uses a kind of a specialized kind of AI to categorize and standardize your product data so that when someone asks, ChatGPT for, the best running shoes under $150, or I don't know, ask Gemini for a gift for someone who loves cooking, your products can now show up based on that answer. And all these four platforms that I mentioned at the start of the show is, I think, it's on March 24th. So ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot, Google AI mode, in search, which is interesting, and then the Gemini app are all managed from one place from within your Shopify admin, and you can toggle each one on or off individually. But here's where some of the details that I think a lot of early coverage got wrong. And there was an early version of this back in January. So OpenAI, just kind of give you a backstory here. OpenAI kind of launched something that they called instant checkout, where you could buy your products without having to leave ChatGPT in the window itself, in the chat window. It sounded slick. I mean, everybody was raving about it. I've even wrote about it, but it came with a 4% fee that was kind of stacked on top of your normal kind of Shopify processing costs. And it did a lot of things that I didn't like either. Was it broke a lot of the post-purchase flows that people would have. Upsells wouldn't fire. I don't know, your thank you page sequence didn't trigger. Like merchants were kind of pushing back pretty hard from what I understand. And so OpenAI decided to retreat on that. And the new model now works completely different. So when a shopper finds your products now in ChatGPT, they tap to buy, and an in-app browser opens up to your checkout in Shopify. So it's your site, it's your complete brand experience, it's your payment methods, your post-purchase tools and things like that are all working all as normal as if they came on the front end of your website. And so this all just works, and it opens up your store basically in a brand new tab. And so the nice thing about it is there's no extra fees. You just use your standard kind of Shopify processing rates, whatever rate you're on, or if you're on Plus or Core, and then you're at different levels. So this matters, I think, to me, and that's why I'm sharing it today, is because you stay the merchant of record. Like you own the customer relationship, and you own your data. And the orders flow from your admin with, kind of clearly from ChatGPT or Copilot referral. And these attribution is actually assigned to that particular order. So you can actually see where these orders are coming from. So it's pretty cool. So I want to put some numbers around a lot of this too, because I think that's kind of important too. And I think a lot of people have kind of wondered, and they're hearing a lot about, AI shopping, and a lot of people believe that it's still a little bit early or it's experimental. And I'm here to tell you 100% it is not. Artie Finkelstein recently, Shopify president, is at a conference called Upfront. And I think it's Upfront Summit, I believe, a few weeks back. Anyway, he was chatting about, AI-driven traffic to Shopify stores has increased 7x since January of 2025. And that's not 7%, that's 7 times. And when you think about AI attributed orders, he mentioned, are actually up 11x over the same period. And that was before the launch. And now every store is now completely discoverable by default. So ChatGPT alone has, I don't know, almost a billion, I'd say 800 or 900 million monthly active users that are currently on ChatGPT. And that's a larger kind of addressable market, even bigger than Google Shopping reaches in most merchant categories. And I think about it, and right now being listed inside ChatGPT costs you nothing. No extra cost. So there's no ad spend. There are no additional fees, just your Shopify subscription and then your normal kind of payment processing. And so what I also find interesting is there was another report that I read too through Adobe, and I think this was maybe at the end of the holiday season last year, but I know they reported that this AI referral traffic, to retail sites is jumped up 300 and 400% year over year. And so here's the number that really caught my attention when I read this report was that, consumers coming from AI platforms, they actually converted at a rate of 31% higher than visitors that came from other sources. And so if you think about that for a minute, it almost implies that there's a lot more clearly higher intent for sure, and having a higher conversion rate, like with no incremental acquisition costs. So I think that's quite interesting. And, what I want to balance here a bit too, because I want to make sure that, it is a little bit early for some people, but the volume is real and it's not completely replacing your meta ads tomorrow. But what it is doing right now, it's creating a new discovery channel like that literally didn't exist 18 months ago. And it's growing at a rate that makes every other channel look flat, to be quite honest with you. And I think that's the question, isn't right now whether it matters or not. I think the question really is whether you're going to show up well when somebody asks AI about your particular product category. I think that's the kind of the key takeaways that I have from that. So here's what I want to zoom out a bit, and I want to share what I think is actually going on, because there's been lots of conversations about this agentic storefronts, and now with this launch. But I think there's a bigger play that's happening underneath all of this. And Shopify just didn't build an integration with ChatGPT. I think they did something very unique. I think they co-developed something that they have been calling this Universal Commerce Protocol with Google, this UCP they call it. And it's kind of an open standard that creates a common language for these AI agents to discover products and to understand inventory and, I don't know, process transactions and just the whole complete kind of commerce framework. And I think about like what HTML did for web pages, but now AI is doing for shopping. And I think this is where companies that are backing this protocol, I think is quite interesting, because you think about Google, but then you think about these big retailers like Walmart, Target, even Etsy, I think American Express, MasterCard, Stripe's involved, Visa. This is not a beta test right now. This is the actual infrastructure that this UCP actually has, this Universal Commerce Protocol. So I think it's really interesting to kind of take that away, and it's powering checkouts, like even in Google AI mode or in the Gemini app. Like it's all going to power checkout in some meta experiences soon. I can guarantee. I can tell this is going to happen, and and Shopify really is positioning itself, as that commerce layer that kind of connects like every AI surface to almost every merchant. And here's what I think the strategic insight is that maybe some people are missing. Shopify really didn't just open up a new plan and call it, I don't know, the agentic plan. And let's not think about like why they didn't do that. Shopify just added the products themselves for free to this thing called Shopify catalog, and now you can just instantly start selling through all these AI channels. If you were on a different platform, I don't know, WooCommerce or BigCommerce or Magento or whatever, you can use Shopify as your agentic commerce middleware if you want, without actually having to migrate your stores. That's quite interesting, where the front end could be a completely different platform, but on the back end, you can have just checkout only, but through AI checkout. So this is pretty wild what's actually going on. And the nice thing about that, Shopify is saying that, hey, you know what? We don't just want to be your e-commerce platform. We want to be the infrastructure layer between every merchant and every AI agent. And I think that, to me, sounds like a much bigger bet than just wanting to acquire net new merchants and use the Shopify platform. They're popping it wide open everywhere. And I think that's pretty interesting. I think Shopify, if you're a merchant right now and you're already inside that infrastructure by default, which is a lot of people that are listening today, you likely have a Shopify store. I think it just gives you an extra advantage. You have, a great kind of checkout experience on web, but now you also have this incredible discovery and potential checkout through these large language models and chatbots and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool. So I want to get into maybe some practicalities, I guess, around all of this. So, whether you're, just getting started or you're running a larger operation, I think there's three things that you need to think about and maybe get going on it this week if possible. I think the first one really is just to confirm you're live and check that you have all the toggles on. Like literally go into the admin and look under sales channels. And I believe there's going to be a section under there, agentic storefronts. It should appear as a channel if it's active on your account, and you can check, which of the four platforms and make sure they're toggled on. That's my recommendation. Leave them all on unless you have a very specific reason why you want to exclude one. But you'll want to kind of maximize your discovery surface. So I would say while it's free, and literally the competitive landscape is pretty thin right now. So I think you're best just to leave them all on. But if for some reason you're not showing up, then make sure that you're set up for Shopify catalog. I think this is for US merchants only, I think, and US buyers. And so I think you have to be kind of auto enrolled. So double check that. The second thing maybe would be to audit your product catalog data. And I think this is a big one. I've had people on the show about this. I've talked about this. The way that AI surfaces your products is kind of fundamentally different than how Google search works. And we've done a lot of things over the years teaching people about product descriptions and metadata and things like that. But AI is actually matching products to conversational questions. So like, I don't know, when someone asks, what's a good weekend bag for, I don't know, a long weekend trip or something, the AI isn't looking at your backlink profile or your domain authority. It's looking at how well your product titles and descriptions and attributes match that question. So, a product like Canvas Weekender Bag Tan is going to get crushed by, waxed canvas. I'm just ad-libbing here, but like weekender bag that's water resistant and fits the airline overhead, and it's tan with leather handles, let's say, right? So let's assume it has all of that. I think that's where you're going to get more discoverability. And I think I would start right away the 80-20 rule again, maybe your top 20 products by revenue. And I would literally rewrite the titles and descriptions as if you're answering a customer's question, not just listing SKU attributes. Like include like what it is, who is for, maybe the problem it solves, any key features that matter to buyers, and kind of any kind of relevant specs. I would get that into the titles and descriptions. And this is essentially what I've been chatting about too, is this answer engine optimization, this AEO. And I think brands that kind of figure this out first are really going to have I would call it a structural advantage for as these AI shopping volumes start to increase. And finally, I have one more thing I want to chat about is about just watching your data, like just the attribution data itself, because starting right now, you should probably start seeing ChatGPT referral data that's flowing into your Shopify analytics. And it's time to make sure you're tracking it. So even if the numbers are really small initially, I think the trend line kind of matters. And so you're watching a new channel form in real time, which I think is really cool. So setup is a simple weekly check, like honestly, like how many sessions or how many orders, what the conversion rate might be, average order value from like AI referred traffic. I think that's an important metric that you want to think about, and compare all of your other channels to it. I suspect that you'll see much higher conversion rates and potentially higher average order values too, because of the shoppers that are coming from these large language models and chatbots are much higher intent shoppers, and they've already kind of described what they want, done a lot of research. So they're not just browsing, they're actually buying. Now, for my larger listeners right now, these enterprise operators that are doing 7 and 8 figures, I think this is also a competitive intelligence play for you right now. Start asking ChatGPT for products in your category and see who else shows up and see how your products show up versus your competitors. I think there is this gap right now between what AI surfaces and where you want to surface. So I think that's something to think about. Get that on your optimization roadmap if you're that enterprise side. And so my perspective, I call it my genuine perspective on this, is that I know it's a little bit tempting to either overhype this kind of AI shopping, or you can kind of dismiss it completely, thinking that maybe this is years away. But I've been in e-commerce for, more than 15 years. I was 6.5 years, as you know, at Shopify. This is definitely the most significant distribution shift that I've ever seen, maybe since mobile. And I don't say that lightly. Like literally, when mobile took off, the brands that kind of optimized their mobile experience early, like they captured what I call a very disproportionate share of market, share of wallet because they were mobile friendly, and in a lot of cases now mobile first. And so the ones who waited and said, well, our customers will still buy on the desktop, really, I believe they lost years of compounding advantage. So I think the same dynamic is kind of playing out right now with the e-commerce, like brands that are optimizing their product data, as I mentioned, or understand how AI surfaces these recommendations is different than regular SEO search, and are actively managing their presence across these platforms, really, I believe, are building an advantage, almost like competitive moat. And I believe that's going to compound for you. And so the volume is still early. That is true. But I think that these habits hopefully are going to start forming as of maybe this today's recording. So, and I think Harley made a really good kind of final comment here that I want to share. And it really stuck with me. And like he said that, brands that, show up first in AI conversations, really are the ones that buyers are going to remember. And I think he's right. There's a lot of what I call first mover advantage that's really happening right now in this conversational commerce world. And, that's very similar to the early days of SEO. Like once consumers develop trust and trust the product associations that maybe AI are recommending, those become sticky. And I think it's really interesting. The other thing I'll say, like for years, you might laugh at this, but for years, merchants, I believe, have been trapped in this kind of paid acquisition cycle. The CAC is increasing. Like every incremental customer costs more and more, like on Meta and Google and TikTok. And I know margins are definitely being compressed. CPCs are definitely increasing. And so, like, what we're seeing with kind of this AI driven commerce is kind of a new, almost like organic discovery channel. Like right now, product results are in ChatGPT. They're organic, they're free, they're unsponsored, they're ranked based on relevance, and no ad is required. I think that's really interesting. I mean, will it last forever? Yeah, probably not. OpenAI, I think I've already kind of mentioned that they're introducing advertising for the free tier users. But right now there is a window. It kind of reminds me of Gary Vaynerchuk making a comment years ago with Google AdWords and, Merlot and Chardonnay for 5 cents a click. No wonder he did so well with Wine Library, and it's very similar. We're in this window right now where I believe merchants who kind of build their presence during this window are the ones that are going to be the hardest to kind of displace when the paid options arrive. So it's really interesting. So I think this kind of connects directly to what I've been writing about recently too. I'm right in the midst of my book here, Thriving with Shopify, and I'm talking about this convergence advantage and just kind of how social and search and commerce seem to be all kind of merging together. And that's kind of what I'm seeing right now with this kind of agentic storefronts, is this convergence happening faster than almost anybody predicted, to be honest with you. These AI conversations, really, they are the new storefront for product discovery. So it's happening. So bottom line, my kind of final takeaways here, your store is or should be live inside ChatGPT, whether you know it or not. You're in there, and whether our shoppers are kind of finding you or not is a separate conversation. That's part of the optimization side. But these AI conversations are happening right now. The three things I mentioned: go out and start that. Like confirm your toggles are on in your admin. Audit your top 20 or 30 products, the titles and descriptions. Make sure that they're conversational in nature, and also make sure you're watching your AI kind of referred kind of attribution data. I think that's incredibly important. And make sure that this isn't something that you should add to your next quarter roadmap. Like literally, it's live right now. It's free. And I think the early movers are the ones that are really going to take advantage of this. And I'm really hoping it compounds and works for you. So I'll put links in this podcast episode about this announcement. I have a few resources and stuff here too, if you want to start tracking your organic and your AI model references, where you rank in queries. I think that's really interesting to find the right tools to do that sort of thing. So Hopefully you find that interesting. I'm Steve Hutt. Once again, thanks so much for listening to E-commerce Fastlane. I want you to keep thriving with Shopify, and I will see you on the next episode.